Ohio State punching the clock, man. All business. Dub over Michigan State. 38-7 was the final score. What do we take away from this game for Ohio State? I mean, what are the talking points coming out of this one going forward? Now, jumping into October, where competition now, it's a little bit more stiff. You know, you'll see a little bit more of some more formidable opponents here going forward. But what do you take away? We'll talk about it right now. Make sure you're subscribed if you're an Ohio State fan. If you're a college football sicko in general, make sure you're subscribed. College football, nothing but college football. Also, follow me now on Instagram and on Twitter at JDPakel. So here's the reality if you're Ohio State, man. You are going to get everybody's best shot. Right? Like, that's the reality. Whenever you have that logo, you wear the helmet with the Buckeye stickers, you know, the scarlet and gray, like, you're going to get everybody's best shot. You're everybody's Super Bowl. And so we saw that in this game for Michigan State, man. Like, they showed some things that they typically hadn't necessarily showed to this point. And if you're Ohio State, man, like, this game isn't your Super Bowl. Of course, it's the biggest game on your schedule because it's the next game, but, like, you're not necessarily saying, okay, we dictate our future based on the Michigan State game. That's not me speaking down on Michigan State. It's just the reality of where Ohio State is and where Michigan State is. Ohio State is still saving some things for the Oregon game, for the Penn State game, obviously the Michigan game at the end of the year, et cetera, et cetera. And so for Michigan State to throw the kitchen sink at them and for Ohio State to show some composure and have to respond, I think overall it's encouraging. Some folks are going to say, whoa, does that show a crack in the armor for your Ohio State? Does that show some weaknesses? To me, I don't think so. I think if anything, actually, if I'm an Ohio State fan, if I'm Ohio State in general, I'm encouraged that there's some moments that apply some pressure to Ohio State. Like, I'm encouraged at the fact that there's a point where you have to show some of that response mechanism early on in that game. Now, Ohio State obviously pulled away and did what they did, but, like, I like seeing Will Howard be in a spot where it's like, hey, we need you to make some plays here, brother. Hey, Ohio State, we need to see some sense of urgency, because the reality is if you get to that game in Autzen, October 12th, at Oregon, and you're like, okay, now you got to turn on the switch. Now this is the first time you're tested. Not really a situation you want to be in. Not really a spot where it's like now you play some formidable competition and you got to actually go get it. Like, not really a recipe for success. Going back to what I said about Will Howard. He looked good last night, man. I mean, 21 for 31, 244, 2 touchdowns. You had the pick. You hate that as a play where he gets pressure and probably should not have gone there with the football. It is what it is. Not perfect, but you see him making the plays. And I think ultimately that's what's going to dictate who Ohio State is this season. And you don't want to get too far into like the playoff culture of, oh, they got to, everyone talking about the 12-team playoff and the national championship, because I think regular season in college football is like what makes the sport what it is. That's why we love this sport. But at the same time, there's certain teams that have expectations that surpass the regular season. Ohio State, they expect to win the conference and compete for and win the national championship. That is the standard. So if that's the standard, that's what you're expecting, what's that going to take? At some point in time, it's going to take Will Howard being the difference for you. And it may be multiple different games where he has to be the difference for you. That was why Kyle McCord ultimately transferred out of Ohio State, why he wasn't guaranteed the starting spot going into next year, because of those crucial moments against Michigan where he didn't make the plays you got to make to win the football game. Will Howard, again, having reps at that, I know it's low stakes, I know it's Michigan State, but just having some pressure on him to make plays, I'm encouraged by. Very, very encouraged by. Now, here's the big story of the game to me. Jeremiah Smith is a created player. He's a true freshman. He's 6'3", 215, had 2 touchdowns last night, had 2 one-handed catches. This dude is different. This dude is special. I want to make sure that we all take a second and recognize this. He is at a very different level, making plays that true freshmen are not supposed to make, let alone at Ohio State. Physically gifted, yes, but competitively, again, the plays that he's making, the things that he's doing, you don't see that. You don't see that. And I think the big takeaway here, if you're Ohio State, is like, okay, you have multiple number 1 caliber players at their position. Like between Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Egbuka, you got 2 number 1 wide receivers. Between Quinshon Judkins, Travion Henderson, you got 2 number 1 running backs. And so for Ohio State now, man, like you have all the firepower you need and then some to go win a national title. And I don't think we need to back off that statement. If Will Howard is the one to bring this all together, if he's able to make the plays where he has to make the plays in the key moments where the talent is a little bit more comparable against the Alabamas and Georgias of the world down the line there, that's going to be the difference. But to have multiple guys you can go to in crunch time, you can't just take away a Emeka Egbuka and not expect Jeremiah Smith to get loose and vice versa. You can't just take away the pass and expect the run game not to get busy. Like, all these things now combine to make Ohio State an absolute force going forward. And the trend of Jeremiah Smith this early on in the season, I know it was Michigan State. I'm not trying to overemphasize or put too much importance on one spot against Michigan State, but to see that, to me, felt very eye-opening, felt very telling of where they're headed. And, again, to have multiple number one players at their position, to have two number one guys you can go to, Ohio State, man, the trend, watch the trend and watch the way they go here going forward. As they open it up more, as they show more, they're going to be exactly what we thought they would be. And that is a very difficult out and a contender for not just the college football playoff, but the national championship. So, subscribe to the channel. Let me know your thoughts on last night's action from Ohio State. And, yeah, man, they're going to be a wagon, just like we thought. We appreciate y'all being subscribed. We're going to keep this party rolling. We will see y'all next time.